Welcome back and happy Thursday, Squirrel Nation. Today we are going to dive into another pro gameplay review. The two teams are City Bacon and Bazzar Gaming. This is part of the RPL Season 2, which is the Thai pro scene. So anyways, let's dive in. So starting off, if you look at the bans that the blue team has made, they banded 3 different jungle assassins, which most likely means they want to go for a poke composition because they're trying to get rid of the people that can kill their poke heroes, which tend to be squishy and have not great mobility. Elsu in this case so far. I would expect them to pick up another poke champion, most likely a mage or, yeah, probably a mage. Red, on the other hand, is kind of even bans. Banned 1 support, Ignis mid, and then the new hero, and I haven't had access to him, so I'm not that familiar with him. Anyways, so let's pause here because something that's really weird to me about what Red just did there is they drafted Jinnar after the enemy team has Annette. So Annette, her ultimate is a great zoning ultimate, so basically it can push all enemies away and then it sets up a impassable barrier that enemies can't pass through. So the reason to me Jinnar is a very weird pick is because Annette's ultimate counters Jinnar's ultimate. So if Jinnar tries to get on the blue team, then Annette can simply ult him away. I would have liked Red to pick up a ranged mage because the blue team already picked Annette. So now Red is basically stuck because they have only Lindis who can do damage into Annette's ultimate. And as we talked about, Blue did end up picking up another poke, not a mage, so I guess Elsu's going to go mid and Violet will be their jungle. But still, they have 2 really strong poke champions, and then they have really nice CC and Roxy, and then Zenial to just come in for that healing and whoever's diving in. Okay, I'm going to pause before we go in to just finish talking about the comps. So, Lindis, to start, I really don't like Red Team. I think they completely lost, and I would be very shocked if Red Team wins this game. And my reasoning for that is this, Blue Team chose poke champions, and they also got Annette, which means that the Red Team has to have range damage because assassins are going to get pushed away, melee are going to get pushed away from the squishies on the blue team. After Annette was picked, the Red Team picked what I would consider champions that got countered by Annette's ultimate in Jinnar and Zeph, right? So the Red Team took that assassin, which is good against poke comps, but it's not good against Annette because when Zeph jumps in, Annette can simply ult him away, and then he's going to get destroyed by Violet and Elsu before he ever has a chance to get back close to them. So another thing that I don't like about Red's composition is Lindis and Jinnar are like mid-game strong heroes, but they do tend to fall off towards the later game, whereas Blue took heroes that just become beasts late game, like especially Violet. Violet's the standard of that point. Another thing to keep in mind about Lindis is extremely bad late game. One of the reasons is because it's very hard for her to defend high ground towers. Lindis, a lot of her damage comes from her passive, which gives her a double attack when she goes into a brush. So now if you imagine you're in your base defending your high ground towers, there's no brush around, meaning Lindis's passive is unusable when she's defending high ground towers, and that means her damage completely falls off, and she's just not going to be able to do much. Once again, we talked about is Jinnar is great at deathball comps, but the thing is Annette's going to be able to... But Jinnar is very reliant on damage from his ultimate, and Annette's going to be able to totally mitigate his ultimate. The only thing that I could possibly see of how Red can win this is they need to snowball very heavily early game, right? And they need to just snowball all the way to close the game, because if the game makes it, like, I would say 15 minutes past, Blue, I would just guarantee is going to win. Red, what they can do, and I think this is their only chance, is they need to stagger. Meaning, Zeph, they need to bait out Annette's ult, and then is when they need to really go for the true engagement. So, for instance, if maybe Omen can get an ultimate on somebody, and Annette uses her ultimate to save whoever gets trapped in Omen's ult, then Jinnar and Zeph could jump in after that. But at the same time, blue has Zenial, who is great at coming after the initial engage. So I just don't see red. I just don't see red doing well in this game. But anyways, let's fast forward a little bit and hop into the actual gameplay. So beginning, nothing special happening, right? They're just going around standard. They're fighting over the river. So far in everything that I've seen from the Thai scene, I think they do poke compositions very well because they make very good use of Annette. And Annette is definitely proving to be what I would consider like crucial to a good poke comp because she is a complete counter to the assassins. She's a complete counter to people who dive on top of your squishy poking champions. So I think that's a great thing that the Thai have been doing in their pro scene. But anyways, people fighting over the river here. Yep, Elsu did end up going mid. And Jinnar is just going to have a really tough time against Elsu, to be honest. Jinnar is not a great 1v1 damage. He is much better at doing damage in group situations. So, yeah, I just don't see him winning this lane. And the problem is him and Lindis really have to snowball early. And the fact that they just gave up First Blood is terrible for them, and especially First Blood onto Violet. They're already, we talked about, Jinnar and Lindis have to get ahead, and if they're actually falling behind and they're feeding the Violet, this game is going to become extremely bad. I think they're already behind composition-wise, so they have to pull this game out in terms of just outplaying the enemy, which it's not starting that way. So the rotations are also interesting if we're paying attention here because if you notice, blue team is putting a lot of focus around the mid lane. They've been consistently keeping 2 to 3 people there, and really more they've been keeping 3 people mid for the majority of the time, whereas red team has been keeping more just the mid laner and the support, and the jungle Zephyrs hasn't really been coming mid to do anything yet. So that is an interesting thing. And I think because of that, blue got essentially free dragon just because red never established control of mid lane, and thus they lost the river. But anyways, red's going for a nice attack up top to try to get... they just gave up on that pretty easily. This kind of becomes another issue with red's composition, is they don't really have range damage to push down the tower. So basically, they're going to be counting on Lindis to take down towers, but they put her in lane, which that's another... Honestly, I'm surprised they put Lindis in lane. I thought they were going to put Zephy in lane and Lindis was going to be the jungle, so to me, that's another really strange decision. And the reason for that is the tower example. So when they just had 3 people go top, they failed to do anything to the top tower, even though 3 people pushed into just a Roxy by herself with a full minion wave. And the reason why is they just had no range damage. So say you would have switched Zeph and Lindis, Lindis would have been able to been popping in and out of the bush top and doing big damage to the tower, whereas Zephyrs is just too scared to do anything because Roxy can ult as soon as one of them hit Roxy and all that type of stuff. So anyways, I don't like that either by red. Lindis should be having a very significant advantage over Zenial, because Zenial really just doesn't have range, and it's going to be hard for him to hit his stun into shield burst combo against a Lindis who has all that brush there and can just be speed boosting herself. Anyways, setting up, next dragon's just spawned right now, and if you notice, Violet is finishing red right now. It'll be curious if she's going to clear jungle or go to dragon. It looks like Violet, the blue team is basically saying we don't have control of the river, so we're not going to go, so Violet's going to finish up her farm. Red has recognized this, and red is just going to collapse onto the dragon. I love what Crush is doing. Jinnar, I love their positioning. They're zoning out the enemies. And interesting engage. Yeah, I mean, nothing really happens. Red gets the dragon. I'm not really sure why Zenial decided to come in. I don't think anybody was at risk of dying, and he hadn't pushed the bottom lane in. If he would have pushed the minions so that the wave was pushing bot into the red side tower, I would have understood more why he ulted in and wanted to distract the enemies. But in that case, it just kind of seemed like he ulted just to ult. Bam, there we go. That's exactly what I was talking about. That's a perfect example, right? So the red team dives onto the squishies, right? And they start to get damage off, but then Annette comes in and just pushes them all back and zones them so strongly. Thankfully, red did collapse in, and I think a big reason that blue lost that fight is because Zenial wasted his ult at the dragon for no reason. So now red is gaining. If Zenial would have ulted in right there when Annette ulted, I mean, red probably would have just got wiped instead of blue game wiped. But anyways, good job for red. They did what they needed to do. They're now ahead. But actually, they're barely ahead. I mean, they're only ahead by, and now they're tied. So they were only ahead by about 100 to 200 gold. So they're definitely not farming as well as they need to. Once again, every second of this game is just putting blue closer to their absolute win condition. If this game gets late, blue is going to win, period. So I do worry for red that even though they just got that huge kill swing, I think they got 3 kills for no deaths, they are still find themselves behind in gold. Yeah, that's a major issue to me. But anyway, so far, both teams have definitely made some mistakes. Zenial used his ult. Red, they've just been making interesting lane choices. Next dragon's coming up. Once again, they're securing river. Blue's doing a lot better job of securing river here. But red is coming into collapse. We'll see again what happens. Violet is still rotating down. It seems like the blue team, the jungle the timings are a little off. They're not quite as crisp as I would expect at a pro level. But I mean, maybe they know better, because honestly, red team didn't go in for the dragon even though they had a man advantage at the dragon pit, and now blue's getting a free dragon. So there's probably something in that I am not understanding that they have thought out. But anyways, top is pushing in. You can see Lindis is pushing that. That's good for them. But bottom just got cleared by Omen. And mid, they're just kind of struggling for control here. So if you notice, this is a great example of just a poke comp. I mean, Violet and Elsu are sitting back and just putting so much damage on the enemy, right? And Annette's just kind of there to be annoying. The enemies can't dive her to get a kill because she can just simply ult away. So, yeah, I mean, this is ending up very, very much how we would expect it, I would say. And see, this is a problem with Red's team. They can't do anything. I mean, blue is just going to poke them forever, and I just don't see how they can stop getting poked. And if you notice, what I mean by poke is, look at Crest. He's done no damage to any of the enemies, and he is down to 10% health, you know? And it's just consistently happening to them. Okay, Linda's just getting caught out. She was pressing bottom too much, and just didn't, yeah, she just stayed too long, basically. But see again, Elsu's just setting up, poking. Watch this. I bet. Notice how the red team just loses health for free. And I mean, that is the best definition of poke, right? There's this concept of trading damage versus poke damage. Trading damage is when you do 50 damage to the enemy does 50 damage to you, right? You're trading damage. Poke is when you do 50 damage to the enemy and they do 0 to you. So that's just a beneficial thing. And I think that's going to be a theme throughout this, is red just has no way to stop themselves from taking poke damage. If we look in the game, you can even see it is the kills are even, but towers are in their favor. Blue just got the Dark Slayer because red just can't come in. They can't contest. They can't contest the map because when they're trying to take space on the map, they're constantly eating poke damage, right? So we are going to keep seeing this. And I just can't get over. I just really dislike the fact that they chose the Lindis to be in lane and Zephy's to be the jungler. Because okay, I began by talking about how Lindis is not good at defending, right? Like, just look at what's happening right now. A major portion of Lindis's damage, overall damage, comes from her passive in the bush. But she just can't do anything here, right? She's just losing towers. Her team's leaving her to defend lane 1v1 with no bush, and she's just losing so much. And actually, I'm sorry, a lot of things are happening, so let's go back to this fight too. And this fight is an example of where red just had a terrible composition. Okay, so notice they need to get on the Violet, they need to get on the Elsu, they find Violet. Okay, well Zenio ults in, and then bam, Annette pushes them back. And now they're just eating damage, right? Jinnar at the same time, he can't go onto Violet because the Annette it has her ultimate up, so the Jinnar does find Elsu, which is nice. Great job. The problem is, Jinnar's been being poked the entire time. He's already like half health by the time he ults, and then Elsu actually just kills Jinnar 1v1 because Jinnar's health is already too low to do anything, right? This, I'm guessing, is going to be game right here. If it's not, the end of the game is very close. I can't say I'm surprised. I think Blue just absolutely won this in the hero selection stage. Like I said in the beginning, I didn't see Red having a chance, and they just simply lost the hero selection, and heavily lost hero selection. And on top of losing hero selection, I think they then made the poor choice of sending Lindis into lane instead of being jungle, which just made their disadvantage even bigger, right? The disadvantage that I was trying to point out this whole game is that when the enemy team has an Annette, you need heroes who can do range damage, and heavy range damage. If you don't have heavy range damage, then Annette will simply ult all your melee damage away, and then just poke your team down, right? So, Red, after Annette was picked, decided to keep picking melee-based heroes. They picked a Jinnar, they picked a Zephyrs, right? So, they picked countered heroes. Like, they picked heroes that were already countered, which is already a bad thing. And then the reason I wanted I wanted Lindis to be the jungle for them was because then she can at least go from lane to lane, and she has rain damage, right? She scales very heavily early game, which the red team needed. The red team, the only chance they had was to snowball the game from the very beginning. Well, guess what? If you put your only range damage, one of your the hero on your team who can most scale and snowball mid and early game, if you just put her in lane by herself, then the chances of her snowballing are extremely minimal. And once again, this Annette is amazing ultimates by this Annette. If you notice, she ulted here, creating an impassable barrier. The enemy team has no way to get together because literally Annette just cut off a major choke point. This was just really, really well played by Blue. Blue played to their strengths. I think Red, I'm not even sure Red realized they lost draft, which is the part that is weird to me because I don't understand why, and I know I'm harping on it, I just don't understand why you pick heroes that are already countered. Anyways, GG comes, so I guess to summarize what I take out of this game, the major things are, when you're drafting, you need to think about every hero and the win condition and their power curve, okay? So if we go back to the original draft and we look at these heroes, and I'm sorry, we're going to go back and talk about this because this, I believe, was the whole game. I think we honestly could have skipped the majority of the gameplay because it was the win or loss was decided here. If you look at Red's team and you consider power curves, okay, well, Lindis is going to spike into mid-game, early in mid-game. Jinnar, spike early to mid-game, fall off late game, fall off late game. Most assassins fall off late game because the champions with range that they need to jump on have built enough items to have even more burst damage than the assassin, and they also have enough survivability to make it through the assassin's burst and then kill them. So Zephyrs also, he's gonna fall off compared to the enemy team, right? Crest, I mean, bottom line, he's a support. He can still soak a lot of damage later in the game, but he's not going to be pushing towers. He's not going to be team wiping you. Omen, great split pusher, but team fights, Omen is not that great. One-on-one, Omen is a beast, right? But if you look at the blue team now, who's he going one-on-one against? Roxy beats Omen. I mean, flat out. Like, Roxy wins that lane. And if you look at blue team, you see these heroes that just scale so heavily, right? Like, Zennial becomes a beast. A Zennial, his damage scales off his health, so by late game, he just gets insanely strong. Violet becomes insanely strong. She's like two-shotting high ground towers, right? Elsu, I haven't played with that much, but I would assume his scaling is also very good because that's just the nature Tencent tends to put into marksman range type heroes. And Roxy, same thing. Roxy does awesome late game. And Annette, her ultimate, her utility is just everything you would want. So, yeah. Anyways, I think that will wrap up today's video. I think I rambled on a little bit just because I think blue just heavily won the early game. But anyways, hopefully you guys liked today's content. If you did, please like and subscribe. In the comments, please let me know what you would like to see in the future, any thoughts you had on today's video. And as always, have a great day and happy ranking. Take care.